Welcome, the Lord's chosen. The most unsettling people in the room are never the loud ones. They're the ones who make everyone else adjust. There's a strange moment that happens before people pull away, before they start watching you a little closer, before the jokes land differently, and the compliments turn cautious. It's the moment they feel something shifting, but they can't point to what exactly. Nothing dramatic has happened. No confrontation, no grand move. Yet the atmosphere changes. Conversations slow down. People become oddly careful with their words. Even the confident ones start over-explaining themselves, like they're on an invisible witness stand. Here's a fact most people never talk about. Human beings subconsciously assess threat long before logic kicks in, long before words matter. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people make judgments about power, unpredictability, and dominance within seconds, often based on restraint, not aggression. That means calm can register as pressure, consistency can feel like control, and someone who isn't scrambling for approval can quietly hijack the emotional balance of a room without trying at all. That's where the discomfort begins. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not playing games. You're not trying to intimidate. Yet people feel something brewing around you, like a storm that hasn't announced itself yet. They can't read your next move, and worse, they can't read themselves around you. That's what rattles them. You don't give off chaos, but you don't give off predictability either. And for most people, predictability is safety. There's also a slightly funny side to this. Watch how people suddenly start acting extra nice, or overly smart, or strangely philosophical. Some will crack jokes that don't quite land. Others will volunteer information nobody asked for. It's not confidence, they're adjusting. You didn't demand attention, but somehow you got it. Not the clapping kind, the cautious kind. This is why some people label you as intense, mysterious, or, if they're being dramatic, a snake charmer. Not because you hypnotize anyone, but because your presence disrupts the usual social autopilot. You don't follow the rhythm everyone else is dancing to. You create a pause, and in that pause, people hear their own thoughts a little too clearly. This isn't about being admired. It's about being felt, and once people feel that shift, they can't unfeel it. Number 1, you don't seek control. And that unsettles people. Most people are quietly obsessed with control, even when they pretend they're not. Control over how they're seen, how conversations go, how outcomes land. It shows up in small ways, steering topics, fishing for agreement, pushing opinions just a little harder than necessary. When someone doesn't do any of that, it throws the whole rhythm off. You don't grab the wheel, yet the car still seems to respond to you. That's unsettling. You don't rush to lead the conversation or dominate the room. You're fine letting things unfold without forcing a direction. And that's exactly the problem. People are used to power announcing itself. They expect authority to be loud, needy, or at least obvious. When none of that appears, they start scanning for hidden motives. They wonder what kind of leverage you must have if you don't need to use it. What really gets under their skin is that you're not trying to win. You're not trying to be right. You're not trying to manage how others react to you. That absence of effort feels like confidence on a different level, the kind that doesn't require validation to stay intact. It makes people feel exposed, because their own need to control suddenly becomes visible in contrast. There's also a deeper layer. When you don't seek control, you're not emotionally invested in manipulating outcomes. You're okay with letting people show who they are. That means others can't hide behind performance or charm as easily. They sense that you're not here to be impressed or persuaded, and that creates pressure without you applying any. People start second-guessing themselves around you. They replay what they said. They wonder how they came across. Not because you judged them, but because you didn't rush to reassure them. Your calm doesn't soothe them. It confronts them with their own restlessness. This is why people feel something brewing. It's not menace, it's restraint. You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to move pieces around to feel secure. And in a world where control is mistaken for strength, someone who doesn't need it feels quietly dangerous. Number 2, you absorb information without reacting the way they expect. Most people talk in order to be responded to. They share something and wait for the nod, the laugh, the disagreement, the emotional cue that tells them they landed where they hoped. It's a rhythm everyone understands. When you don't follow it, the whole exchange feels unstable. You listen, you take things in, and you don't rush to show your hand. That alone makes people uneasy. You don't reward statements with instant approval or punish them with visible judgment. You let words sit. And when words are allowed to sit, people start hearing themselves more clearly. They notice the exaggerations, the contradictions, the little performances they didn't even know they were putting on. Your lack of reaction becomes a mirror they didn't ask to look into. What unsettles people most is that they can't tell what you've registered. You don't interrupt to prove you're smart. You don't rush to relate everything back to yourself. You don't soften uncomfortable moments with filler talk. That makes others wonder what you're storing away, how much you're connecting behind your eyes, and whether they just revealed more than they meant to. There's power in that kind of attention, not loud power, quiet power. The kind that doesn't announce itself but shifts the balance of the interaction. People start explaining themselves too much, clarifying points you never challenged, adding details nobody asked for. They're trying to regain control of the narrative, but your steady presence keeps it just out of reach. You're not cold. You're not detached. You're simply not reactive. And in a world trained to equate reaction with engagement, that feels almost confrontational. People mistake your composure for calculation because they can't imagine listening without an agenda. The truth is simpler and sharper. You listen to understand, not to perform. You let information collect before you decide what it means. That patience reads as depth, and depth makes people nervous, because once they sense you're really paying attention, they realize you're seeing patterns, not just moments. And when someone feels truly seen, without being handled gently, it leaves a mark they can't shake. Number 3, you don't rush to expose yourself emotionally. Most people are terrified of silence because silence exposes them. They fill it with words, opinions, or oversharing to create a sense of control. You, however, move differently. You don't hand out your thoughts or feelings like candy. You don't feel the need to justify your moods, explain your choices, or perform for approval. That alone unsettles people because they're used to measuring connection by emotional transparency. When they can't map your inner world immediately, they start noticing their own. Your restraint isn't coldness, it's precision. You know your emotional energy is yours, and you guard it not to manipulate, but to stay grounded. People sense this immediately. They pick up on the calm aura, the unhurried nature of your reactions, the way you carry experiences without broadcasting them. It creates a tension in others, because they realize that any attempt to predict, influence, or read you is an uphill task. You aren't hiding. You simply refuse to offer a shortcut. This quiet control over your emotional exposure forces others to confront themselves. They realize how often they rely on reactive cues to gauge relationships, trust, and influence. They notice how easily they overshare or react out of habit, how desperately they try to make others safe for them. Your stillness acts like a lens that amplifies their own impulses, and that intensity feels uncomfortable because it's raw and unavoidable. The effect is cumulative. Each interaction, each observation, subtly convinces people that you aren't just present. You're anchored in ways they are not. You make them realize that emotional restraint doesn't mean disconnection. It means mastery, a calm command over your own narrative that others can't touch. That mastery doesn't intimidate with spectacle. It unsettles because it doesn't need to. When people sense this, they start measuring themselves against it, second-guessing their reactions and walking on social eggshells they didn't even know existed. Your emotional discipline is not just a personal advantage, it's a force field. And once it's felt, it lingers, quietly powerful, unmistakably compelling, and impossible to ignore. Number 4. You adjust to rooms faster than others notice. Most people walk into a room and take a few minutes, sometimes hours, to find their footing. They look for familiar faces, gauge energy, and test boundaries. You don't do that in the obvious way. You scan, you absorb, and you calibrate almost imperceptibly. By the time everyone else is still figuring out the vibe, you've already settled, already read the subtle hierarchies, the hidden tensions, and the unspoken rules. That kind of awareness is quiet, but it's deeply unsettling to others because they sense it without understanding it. You don't announce your understanding. You don't perform dominance or try to impress. You simply exist in a way that shows you belong anywhere without struggling to fit in. And that makes people nervous. Humans instinctively look for cues from others to figure out where power, influence, and trust lie. When someone moves confidently but silently, people feel unmoored. They start questioning their own place, their own influence, and even the security of their assumptions about the space. The subtlety is key. You don't have to speak first or act loud. You let the room reveal itself to you, and you respond in ways that feel natural, almost effortless. People notice, sometimes subconsciously, that you get it faster than they do. Their minds race to understand why they feel this invisible pressure. They start second-guessing their statements, their gestures, and their tone, because your presence has shifted the equilibrium without a single word. Over time, this becomes a pattern. People start treating your observations as if they carry weight, even when you say nothing of consequence. Your insight doesn't need validation, because it's self-evident in the way interactions subtly bend around you. You've become the quiet pivot in a room where everyone else is still trying to find balance. That's why your presence is magnetic and unnerving at the same time. It isn't about control in the obvious sense. It's about perception, timing, and a deep, almost invisible understanding of human behavior. You don't just enter a room, you quietly realign it, and people feel the shift long before they can articulate it. Number 5, you're comfortable being misunderstood for long periods. Most people panic the moment someone misreads them. They rush to clarify, defend, or justify. They feel exposed when perception drifts from reality and work hard to fix it immediately. You, however, operate differently. You understand that the world will rarely see you exactly as you are, and you don't let that bother you. You let misunderstandings linger, and in doing so, you turn a perceived weakness into quiet strength. People notice, and it makes them uneasy, because they expect you to fight for approval, explanation, or acceptance, and you don't. Being comfortable with being misunderstood isn't indifference. It's control over your own narrative. You know who you are and what you're doing, and you aren't dependent on someone else's interpretation to validate it. That patience creates tension around you. Others start projecting their assumptions, guessing at your motives, and analyzing your every move, because your silence refuses to correct them. Every pause, every measured word, every choice to let things lie builds a subtle aura that others can't easily decode. The effect is profound. When someone can't place you in their mental hierarchy, they begin to overcompensate. They over-explain themselves, they reveal too much, or they act out in ways they wouldn't normally. Your calm tolerance of being misunderstood exposes the fragility of those who need certainty, approval, or alignment. It forces them to confront their own assumptions, and that discomfort resonates deeper than any argument or confrontation could. There's also an invisible kind of power in this. People mistake your silence for mystery, indecision, or even superiority, when in reality it's neither. It's simply a reflection of self-possession, of someone who doesn't need to justify existence on someone else's terms. That creates a magnetic tension. They can't ignore you, yet they can't predict you. And that uncertainty makes them feel off balance. Being misunderstood for long periods is a rare skill because it requires patience, confidence, and self-reliance. You turn what most see as a problem into an unspoken leverage. Others feel the weight of it, even if they can't articulate why, and that weight is precisely what makes your presence quietly unavoidable. Number 6. You don't explain your intelligence to feel superior. Most people feel the need to prove themselves, to show off knowledge, cleverness, or insight. It's a way of creating hierarchy, a social signal that says, I'm worth listening to. You operate differently. You don't feel compelled to broadcast what you know. You don't insert yourself into conversations to demonstrate intelligence, and you certainly don't use it as a weapon to dominate or belittle others. That subtle restraint is deeply unsettling to people because they can't figure out where you stand. They're used to markers, labels, and obvious cues. When you skip all of that, they start trying to fill in the blanks themselves, often incorrectly. Your intelligence isn't performative, it's intrinsic. You let it work quietly, guiding your decisions, shaping your observations, and steering interactions without fanfare. People notice that you seem to understand more than you reveal, and that creates a low-level tension. They begin to wonder how much you're aware of, what you've noticed, and whether their own missteps or exaggerations have been recorded silently in your mind. Your restraint forces them into vulnerability because you don't give them the relief of reassurance or affirmation that usually comes from someone trying to impress. There's also a magnetic quality to this approach. Because you don't flaunt knowledge, people can't dismiss you, but they can't overestimate you either. They start paying attention in a different way, listening harder, thinking more carefully, questioning themselves. You shift the balance of perception without ever demanding it. Your intelligence becomes a presence, not a performance, and presence is far more disarming than words. Over time, this creates an almost invisible aura of authority. You aren't intimidating in the loud, obvious sense, but your very approach signals that you are aware, capable, and untouchable by conventional social games. People start measuring their own words, actions, and intentions against an unseen standard, and that tension lingers long after you've left the room. In refusing to explain your intelligence, you allow it to be felt instead, and that's a far more potent and unsettling force than most ever encounter. Number 7. You don't chase respect. You wait for consistency to earn it. Most people want respect immediately. They push for it with words, titles, or performance, hoping to be acknowledged before they've truly proven themselves. You don't play that game. You understand that respect is not a demand. It's a reflection of trust built over time. You don't need applause or recognition in the moment. You operate in a way that shows your values, your focus, and your integrity consistently day after day without fanfare. That quiet patience unnerves people because they can't speed it up or manipulate it. They have to meet you on your terms. Consistency is more powerful than any dramatic display. People notice patterns even subconsciously. They notice how your reactions, your decisions, and your presence remain steady in situations where others wobble. They notice how you don't bend for convenience, approval, or social pressure. That reliability delivered without noise or show, carries weight that most people can't match. It doesn't demand respect. It commands it through invisible authority. What makes this unsettling is that people can't control it. They can't buy it, flatter you into giving it, or intimidate it out of you. You don't hand out validation, and you don't chase it. Your consistency forces them to confront their own inconsistency. They feel their own words, actions, and priorities being measured against a quiet, unwavering standard they didn't set and can't influence. That realization can be uncomfortable, even painful, because it exposes hidden weaknesses or indecisiveness they normally ignore. Over time, this approach creates a subtle tension around you. People start weighing every interaction, thinking about how they appear, wondering what they may have missed, all because you have refused to rush, overreact, or seek validation. You don't need to announce your worth. It reveals itself naturally, quietly, and relentlessly. By waiting for respect to be earned through consistency, you create a presence that is impossible to dismiss. People may not understand it immediately, but they can't ignore it. That patience, discipline, and quiet authority build a kind of power that feels almost gravitational, drawing attention, admiration, and unease simultaneously, long before any words are spoken. Number 8. You're slow to commit, but absolute once you do. Most people treat decisions like a game of speed. They rush to show loyalty, pick sides, or make promises because the world rewards immediacy over depth. You operate differently. You take your time. You observe, you measure, and you weigh before giving anything close to a definitive answer. That patience creates an invisible tension around you, because people sense that your eventual commitment isn't casual. It carries weight. When you do decide, it isn't negotiable, and it isn't performative. It is absolute, and that certainty is rare enough to unsettle those around you. Your approach makes others anxious because it forces them into uncertainty. They can't predict your next move, and they can't pressure you into alignment. This unpredictability is not recklessness, it's deliberate. You understand that time is a filter that reveals character, loyalty, and truth. By waiting, you allow people, situations, and intentions to fully reveal themselves before you act. That restraint signals a kind of power that's quiet, but undeniable. People pick up on it instinctively. They sense that anything you commit to is measured, calculated, and unshakable. When you do act, your decision lands like a weight. It's not the loud declaration of someone seeking validation. It's a steady, immovable force. That absolute commitment changes dynamics around you immediately. Allies feel the security of your certainty. Others feel the gravity of your presence, realizing that misjudging you or underestimating your timing has consequences. The tension you create isn't built on intimidation. It's built on authenticity and patience. People notice when someone doesn't rush, when someone allows context and reality to shape choices rather than impulse or pressure. That creates a magnetic influence. Your actions carry credibility because they are informed by observation, not ego. Being slow to commit and absolute once you do is a rare combination. It commands respect without demanding it, shifts perception without spectacle, and leaves a lasting impression. People may not understand why they feel unsettled around you, but they do. It's the quiet awareness that when you finally move, it's final, and nothing about it is trivial. Number 9. You notice power games but refuse to play them openly. Most people are trapped in invisible competitions they barely recognize. They jockey for influence, subtly manipulate outcomes, and watch for weaknesses in others, often unconsciously. You, however, see all of it clearly, and yet you don't participate in the obvious way. You don't broadcast dominance, you don't try to outshine, and you don't need to prove yourself in petty exchanges. That refusal is what makes people nervous. They expect reactions, challenges, or alliances, And when none come, the usual rules of social hierarchy feel suspended. By observing rather than acting, you gain insight that others cannot. You see motives, patterns, and unspoken tensions without getting entangled. People around you start overcompensating, trying harder, saying too much, revealing too much, because they sense you are aware in a way that is silent but precise. Your non-reaction is far more powerful than any aggressive maneuver. It communicates control without aggression, intelligence without posturing, and awareness without threat. What unsettles people the most is the unpredictability of it. They can't tell whether you are indifferent, strategic, or simply untouchable. That uncertainty creates a subtle pressure that reshapes how interactions unfold. Those who rely on social manipulation or dominance to feel secure find themselves exposed, adjusting their behavior without knowing why. They start second-guessing statements, questioning intentions, and quietly measuring every move because you have disrupted the usual flow of social expectation. Your silence in the face of power plays is not weakness, it's calculated restraint. You are patient, gathering context and understanding, while others burn energy on superficial wins. That creates a hidden kind of authority. People feel that you are always 2 steps ahead, even when you do nothing at all. By refusing to play these games openly, you become the axis around which social tension subtly pivots. Your presence forces others to reveal their strategies and motives, often without realizing it. They may not understand why they feel off balance, but the truth is clear. You are watching, aware, and unshaken, and that makes you quietly, unmistakably formidable. Number 10. You make people reveal themselves by staying neutral. Most people assume that conversation is a two-way tug of war. You push, they pull, and somewhere in the middle lies understanding. You operate differently. You don't push. You don't argue to prove a point or dominate dialogue. You stay neutral, calm, and measured. And that simple stance has a profound effect. People don't just talk to you. They inadvertently reveal themselves. They offer more than they intended, justify themselves unnecessarily, and expose patterns of thought and behavior they usually hide. Your neutrality creates a mirror that they can't ignore, and that makes them uneasy because it isn't flattering or confrontational, it's simply revealing. The power in this approach lies in patience. You don't react to bait, and you don't chase engagement. You absorb information, ask the occasional clarifying question if necessary, and then retreat back into observation. People sense that whatever they reveal isn't being judged in the conventional way. That silence, that refusal to be pulled into drama or allegiance, amplifies their own self-consciousness. They start over-explaining, overthinking, and sometimes contradicting themselves without even realizing it. You've created a situation where your presence is the catalyst for truth, and they can't control the outcome. Your neutrality also forces reflection. People begin to notice inconsistencies between their public persona and their private tendencies. They realize how often they shape behavior to meet expectations rather than act authentically. You don't need to comment, challenge, or approve. The exposure happens naturally because you've refused to intervene. That makes your presence both magnetic and slightly intimidating. By staying neutral, you shift the balance of interactions without ever seeming to exert influence. You make people work harder to understand themselves, and that work often leaves them slightly unsettled. Your restraint becomes a lens, revealing the cracks, motives, and hidden ambitions of those around you. What they experience isn't manipulation in the traditional sense. It's the subtle, unavoidable power of someone who watches, listens, and waits, letting others reveal more than they intended, all while you remain untouchably composed. Number 11. You don't borrow identity from groups or trends. Most people define themselves through association. They latch onto trends, ideologies, social groups, or labels because it's easier than thinking independently. It provides instant validation and a ready-made identity. You don't operate that way. You carve your own path, form your own beliefs, and measure yourself by your own standards. That independence is immediately noticeable, and it makes people uneasy because it disrupts the social map they rely on to navigate relationships. They expect conformity, cues, and familiar markers. When you don't offer any of those, they're left trying to figure out who you are and what you represent, and they often get it wrong. The unsettling part is subtle but profound. People unconsciously assess whether someone can be influenced, categorized, or predicted. When you refuse to adopt the easy labels or follow the crowd, you become unpredictable. You don't need permission to exist as you are, and that self-possession creates tension for those who depend on social scripts. They notice how your decisions, style, and thoughts emerge organically, without the crutch of borrowed identity. That quiet confidence registers as authority without being aggressive. Because you're independent, people start projecting onto you. They try to assign motives, speculate about allegiances, or anticipate your reactions. Your refusal to fit a template forces them to confront the reality that not everyone can be contained or categorized. That awareness triggers subtle discomfort. It makes them overanalyze interactions, question assumptions, and sometimes even second-guess their own values. Your self-authored identity also signals strength and authenticity. People sense that you aren't performative. You're not seeking approval, belonging, or validation through affiliation. That alone communicates a kind of power most can't replicate. You set the pace, the tone, and the boundaries without announcing it, and people feel the gravity of your presence even when you say very little. By not borrowing identity from groups or trends, you become a living proof of self-sufficiency and quiet authority. People can feel it in every interaction, and that feeling lingers. It's not confrontation, manipulation, or spectacle. It's simply the unsettling power of someone who stands firmly as themselves, while the world keeps trying to fit them into a box they'll never occupy. Number 12. You treat chaos as information, not a threat. Most people panic when chaos appears. They react emotionally, lash out, or try to regain control, driven by the fear of uncertainty. You operate differently. When chaos erupts, whether it's drama in a room, tension between people, or unexpected problems, you don't react with panic or judgment. You observe. You absorb the details, note the patterns, and use the disorder as a source of insight. That calm detachment unsettles people because they instinctively expect everyone to flinch under pressure. When someone doesn't, it creates a subtle tension they can feel but can't explain. You notice the hidden structures in chaos that others miss. You see motives, vulnerabilities, and dynamics that are invisible to those consumed by emotion. While others argue, complain, or overreact, you quietly collect information, connecting dots that eventually reveal a clear picture. People sense this awareness even if they don't consciously recognize it. They feel the weight of your observation because it carries the silent implication. You understand what's happening, even when they think it's unpredictable or out of control. Your calm in the middle of chaos also signals mastery. People notice that your responses, or lack thereof, carry meaning without words. You don't need to intervene to influence the outcome. Simply being present and composed shifts the energy of the room. Others start second-guessing their reactions, worrying that they've revealed too much or acted in ways that compromise them. The fact that you remain steady while they stumble makes your presence magnetic and slightly intimidating. Treating chaos as information rather than a threat also communicates resilience. You aren't easily rattled, swayed, or manipulated. Your stability becomes a subtle force, guiding situations without obvious control. People realize that in your presence, storms are not dangers. They are lessons, opportunities, and signals. That realization makes them nervous because it exposes how often they themselves are reactive, impulsive, or unprepared. By reframing chaos in this way, you quietly shift the balance of every interaction. Your ability to remain grounded and observant in the midst of disorder creates influence without aggression, authority without demand, and a presence that people feel before they fully understand it. Number 13. You don't rush outcomes, you let them mature. Most people are in a constant hurry. They want decisions fast, results faster, and validation even faster. Patience feels uncomfortable to them because they equate speed with success. You operate on a different wavelength. You understand that meaningful results, genuine influence, and real understanding require time. You don't force outcomes, manipulate timelines, or rush interactions. Instead, you let situations unfold naturally, observing, adjusting, and waiting for the right moment. That deliberate pace unsettles people because it contrasts so sharply with their habitual urgency. By allowing things to mature, you gain clarity that others miss. You see intentions, patterns, and consequences more clearly because you don't act impulsively. You notice inconsistencies, hidden motives, and opportunities that rushed decisions would obscure. People sense this awareness without fully realizing why. They feel a subtle pressure, a quiet weight that comes from knowing you are not bound by timelines or expectations. They exist on your own terms. Your patience also forces others to reveal themselves. People are uncomfortable when someone doesn't react the way they expect. They over-explain, second-guess, and sometimes even self-sabotage in the process. They try to push you into action, to provoke a response, or to accelerate a conclusion. But your calm refusal to be rushed exposes their impatience, insecurity, and lack of long-term vision. Over time, this approach cultivates influence without aggression. People start trusting your judgment not because you demand it, but because your outcomes consistently carry weight. Your timing becomes a silent signal of authority. Others notice that you act when it matters, not when it's convenient or urgent. Your decisions feel inevitable because they are informed, measured, and strategically placed. By not rushing outcomes, you command a presence that is both magnetic and slightly unsettling. People feel the rhythm of your awareness, the patience that allows insight to deepen, and the quiet certainty that when you finally move, it is decisive, impactful, and unavoidable. That ability to let life unfold while staying grounded is rare, and it leaves an impression far stronger than any show of haste ever could. Number 14. You're not charming to be liked. You're precise to be understood. Most people equate charm with likability. They smile, joke, compliment, and perform little social tricks to make others feel comfortable or impressed. You operate on a completely different wavelength. You don't use charm as a currency. You don't twist yourself to fit expectations or bend your words to please. Instead, your focus is precision, clarity in thought, action, and communication. You want to be understood exactly as you are, not admired for the performance of being likable. That difference is subtle but powerful, and it unsettles people because it refuses the usual social contract of approval. When you speak or act with precision, every word, gesture, and decision carries weight. People notice the intent behind what you do, the care in how you express yourself, and the alignment between what you say and what you mean. It doesn't scream authority or dominance, but it creates a quiet gravity. People start paying attention differently. They don't just hear your words, they feel them. They analyze your motives, reconsider their own assumptions, and sometimes overcompensate in response. Your presence becomes a mirror that reflects truth without flattery, and that reflection can be uncomfortable. The real power of precision is that it forces honesty. Others realize that there's no hidden agenda or empty performance to navigate, which exposes how often they themselves rely on social games, exaggeration, or pretense. Your clarity highlights their inconsistencies and forces them to confront reality without overt confrontation. That tension leaves a lasting mark because it's subtle, pervasive, and impossible to ignore. By prioritizing understanding over likability, you set a standard few can match. People sense your authenticity and the rare combination of intelligence, restraint, and self-possession. You don't need applause or smiles to validate your presence. Your influence comes from the precision with which you navigate the world and the undeniable sense that your actions, words, and attention are deliberate. That is what makes you magnetic, slightly intimidating, and unforgettable. When people feel you in a room, they feel not just a person. They feel the weight of someone who operates beyond performance, someone whose presence is undeniable because it is genuine. When you step into a room, people notice more than your presence. They notice the subtle currents you create without ever raising your voice. It isn't loud gestures, flashy moves, or desperate attempts for validation that make you unforgettable. It's the quiet mastery of yourself, the patience to let chaos unfold, the restraint to absorb without reacting, the intelligence that doesn't need to be proven, and the precision that communicates truth without performance. You don't chase approval, manipulate perception, or seek immediate recognition. Instead, you let your consistency, awareness, and calm authority do the work for you. People feel it. They sense that something is different, something deeper, even before they can put it into words. Your ability to observe without being controlled by impulse, to act when it matters, and to stand independently of trends and opinions makes you magnetic and slightly unsettling. This isn't intimidation. It's influence rooted in authenticity. It's power disguised as calm. It's presence that doesn't demand attention but earns it, not through spectacle, but through the undeniable weight of someone fully aligned with themselves. The effect is subtle but profound. Others reveal themselves, rethink their own patterns, and feel the shift in dynamics long before you speak. They may not understand why they're drawn to you or why they tread lightly around you, but they can't ignore it. That is the rare quality of someone who operates not just with awareness, but with mastery. Someone who is deeply seen, deeply felt, and impossible to overlook. If this video resonated with you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the community for more insights into human behavior, power, and presence. Like the video if it gave you a new perspective, comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who needs to understand the subtle art of influence. Your engagement helps us continue creating content that makes you think, feel, and level up your awareness every single time. Stay blessed always.